My name is Lauren Brooks, and I was 36 years old the morning my entire family disappeared without me. I arrived at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport almost 3 hours before departure, just as I always did. As an emergency room nurse, I believed being early was cheaper than being stressed. Our family vacation had been my older brother Ethan's idea. 10 days in Costa Rica, he said. Everything was booked under his account, and every time I offered to pay for my own ticket, he laughed. Relax, Lauren. I've got everything covered. Standing at the airline counter, I handed over my driver's license with a smile. The agent typed for several seconds. Then her expression changed. I'm sorry, ma'am, your reservation was cancelled last night. I blinked. There must be a mistake. She checked again. No, ma'am. The booking owner removed your ticket at 11:47 p.m. My stomach tightened. What about the rest of my family? They've already boarded. For a second, the airport around me disappeared. I called Ethan. Voicemail. I called my mother. Voicemail again. Then my phone vibrated. One text. Ethan. The boys need you more than we do. Attached was a photo. My 2 nephews, 8-year-old twins Noah and Liam, were sitting alone near gate C-18 with matching blue backpacks. No adults. No explanation. Only 2 frightened boys trying very hard not to cry. A loudspeaker interrupted my thoughts. Lauren Brooks, please report to airport security. My legs suddenly felt too weak to walk. The security office smelled like coffee and disinfectant. Noah looked up first. The moment he saw me, he ran straight into my arms. Liam stayed in his chair. He wasn't crying. He was simply staring at the floor like someone who already knew adults could disappear. An airline supervisor handed me a folded note. It was Ethan's handwriting. Their Aunt Lauren Brooks will pick them up. That was all. No apology. No explanation. Just my name. A police officer quietly explained that the boys had been sitting alone for almost 30 minutes before airport staff realized no adult had returned. I asked the question that mattered most. Where did my family fly? The supervisor looked at her screen. They connected through Houston, then continued to Belize. Belize? Our vacation had supposedly been Costa Rica. Nobody had mentioned another country. At that moment, I realized something that chilled me more than the air conditioning. This hadn't been a mistake. Someone had planned every minute of it. And somehow, I had become the only adult left in those boys' lives. The ride home was almost silent. Noah sat by the window, clutching his blue backpack so tightly his knuckles turned white. Liam stared out at the Texas highways without saying a word. Every few minutes, he glanced at his phone, hoping it would ring. It never did. When we reached my townhouse in Plano, neither boy asked where their parents were. Instead, Noah quietly asked, "Can we sleep here, just for tonight?" My heart broke. Of course. That evening, I made grilled cheese sandwiches because it was the only thing I knew almost every child liked. Neither of them finished half. Around midnight I heard footsteps upstairs. Liam stood in the hallway holding his backpack. "I don't want to unpack," he whispered. "Why?" "Because Dad said they'd come back soon." I looked at the little boy standing there in dinosaur pajamas, trying so hard to believe something that even I no longer believed. I couldn't lie to him. So I simply said, "We'll be ready whenever they call." He nodded and placed the backpack beside the bedroom door. The next morning my phone finally rang. Not Ethan. A woman introduced herself as Rebecca Martinez from Texas Child Protective Services. Airport security had filed an abandonment report. She arrived that afternoon carrying a thick folder. She walked through my house, checked the boys' room, asked about my work schedule, and watched Noah automatically pour cereal for his brother before serving himself. She noticed everything. So you're an ER nurse? Yes. Stable employment? For 12 years. She smiled gently. That helps. Before leaving, Rebecca paused at the front door. Has your brother contacted you about his finances? I frowned. No. She hesitated for a moment. If he does, save every message. Those words stayed with me. That weekend I drove to Ethan's house in Frisco to collect the boys' clothes. The front yard looked perfect. Fresh flowers. Perfectly trimmed grass. A new luxury SUV still sat in the driveway. But inside, the house felt wrong. The master bedroom closets were nearly empty. Family photo albums were gone. The home office safe stood wide open. Every drawer had been cleaned out. Then I noticed a stack of unopened envelopes on the kitchen island. Final notice. Mortgage default. Past due. Tax lien. I opened another envelope. The balance owed was more money than I had earned in 5 years. My hands started shaking. This wasn't a family vacation. It was an escape. And Ethan had made sure his sons weren't coming with him. When I returned home that evening, I found Liam sitting on my porch. His backpack rested beside him. He looked up and asked the question I had been dreading. Aunt Lauren. If Dad comes back, will he remember where we live? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Because I honestly didn't know whether Ethan had forgotten his sons. Or had simply decided they were easier to leave behind. The following Monday, life became a blur of paperwork, school forms, and phone calls. Rebecca Martinez helped me file for temporary guardianship, explaining every step with the calm voice of someone who had delivered difficult news 1,000 times before. It doesn't mean you'll have them forever, she said. It just means they'll have someone legally responsible for them. Forever. That word echoed in my mind long after she left. At the hospital, my best friend Emily Carter, a trauma nurse I'd worked beside for nearly 10 years, noticed I wasn't myself. You haven't slept. I smiled. I have. She raised an eyebrow. Lauren, sitting in a chair for 2 hours isn't sleeping. She was right. Every night I listened for footsteps. Every morning I checked my phone, expecting Ethan to finally explain everything. Nothing. Not a text. Not an email. Not even a missed call. The boys slowly settled into my routine. School. Homework. Dinner together every evening. Noah laughed first. It happened while we baked chocolate chip cookies. He accidentally covered himself in flour and looked like a tiny snowman. For the first time since the airport, he laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. Liam didn't. He smiled. But his eyes stayed cautious. One afternoon I picked them up from school and noticed Liam carrying a folded piece of paper. What's that? He hesitated. My teacher asked us to draw our family. He handed it to me. 3 stick figures stood in front of a small brick house. Me. Noah. Liam. There was no Ethan. No mother. Only us. At the top, written in careful second-grade handwriting, were 5 words. My family keeps me safe. I had to turn away before the boys noticed the tears filling my eyes. That evening another surprise arrived. 2 men in dark suits knocked on my front door. They introduced themselves as agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We'd like to ask a few questions about your brother. My stomach dropped. Inside, they spread several photographs across my kitchen table. Luxury homes. Boats. Investment brochures. Wire transfer records. One photo stopped me cold. It showed Ethan standing beside dozens of smiling retirees at a financial seminar. Across the banner behind him were the words, "Building your future together." One agent looked directly at me. "Did your brother ever ask you to invest?" "Once." "Did you?" "No." "Why not?" I answered honestly. "Because nothing about it made sense." The older agent nodded slowly. "That answer may have saved your life savings." Before leaving, he handed me his card. "If your brother contacts you, call us before you answer." As their car disappeared down the street, I stood frozen on the porch. This wasn't just a family betrayal anymore. It was becoming something much bigger. And somehow, my nephews and I were standing right in the middle of it. 3 weeks passed. Life slowly found a rhythm. Every morning I drove Noah and Liam to school before heading to the hospital. Every evening we ate dinner together, finished homework, and watched one episode of whatever cartoon they were obsessed with that week. For the first time in months, the house felt less like a shelter and more like a home. Then everything changed. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. My phone buzzed while I was checking a patient's chart. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. "Lauren?" I froze. It was Ethan. His voice sounded calm. Too calm. "I need you to do something for me." Not "how are the boys?" Not "I'm sorry." Not "are they okay?" Just, "I need something." I walked into an empty supply room and locked the door. "Where are you?" "You don't need to know. The boys have been asking about you every single day." Silence. Then he sighed. "Listen carefully. I left an envelope in a storage unit outside Houston. I need you to pick it up." "What's inside?" "Documents." "What kind of documents?" "You ask too many questions." I felt anger rising inside me. "You abandoned your children at an airport. They cry themselves to sleep. And all you care about is an envelope?" For several seconds, he said nothing. Then came the sentence I will never forget. "I didn't abandon them. I left them with the only person I knew would never say no." The line went silent. He had planned everything. Not because he trusted me. Because he knew I couldn't walk away from 2 innocent children. "You used me." "No. I counted on you." The difference hit me like ice water. To him, there wasn't one. "I'm not helping you. You don't understand what's happening." "Then explain it." "I can't." The call ended. Just like that. When I got home that evening, I found 2 federal agents waiting outside my house. Apparently Ethan's phone had been under surveillance. They already knew he'd called. What did he ask for? An envelope. The younger agent exchanged a look with his partner. "We've been looking for that storage unit for months." The next morning, escorted by the FBI, I unlocked a small metal unit outside Houston. There were no boxes. No furniture. Only one fireproof safe. Inside were hundreds of pages of financial records. Investor contracts. Bank transfers. Offshore account numbers. And one handwritten notebook. The first page contained only one sentence. "If you're reading this, someone finally stopped believing me." The older agent slowly closed the notebook. "This is enough to bring down everyone involved." I looked at the boxes of evidence. Then I thought about Noah and Liam eating cereal before school that morning. They had no idea that, while they worried about math homework and baseball practice, their father's entire life was collapsing inside a tiny storage unit. Within 48 hours, the news was everywhere. Every television station in Texas seemed to be talking about Hawthorne Capital, Ethan's investment company. Retirees had lost their savings. Families had lost their homes. More than 200 investors had trusted promises that never existed. The FBI officially charged Ethan with fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. His face appeared on every news channel. Noah saw it first. He pointed at the television in the waiting room while I was finishing paperwork after one of his doctor's appointments. "Aunt Lauren. That's Dad." Every person in the room turned to look at us. I grabbed the remote and switched the television off. "It's okay," I whispered. But it wasn't. Not even close. That evening, Rebecca Martinez stopped by after work. She placed another folder on my kitchen table. The court-approved temporary guardianship. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. "But," she continued, "if your brother contests it, this could become a long legal battle." I nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." Rebecca looked toward the living room. Noah and Liam were building a blanket fort and laughing together. "They're healing," she said quietly. "Don't underestimate what you've already done." The next morning, my mother finally called. She had ignored my messages for nearly a month. Her voice trembled. "I didn't know." "Know what?" "Ethan convinced me to invest." My heart sank. "How much?" There was a long silence. Then she whispered. "My retirement." Every dollar she had saved over 35 years of teaching elementary school. Gone. She began crying. I thought I was helping him. I closed my eyes. The damage was bigger than I had imagined. This wasn't just strangers losing money. It was our own family. A week later, another surprise arrived. An official letter from Ethan's attorney. He wanted partial visitation rights with the boys until his criminal trial. The request claimed he had never intended to abandon his children. Instead, it described the airport incident as a temporary family childcare arrangement. I read that sentence 3 times. Temporary? The boys had been left alone in one of the busiest airports in America. Without food. Without money. Without knowing where their parents had gone. There was nothing temporary about their fear. I handed the letter to my attorney. She smiled for the first time since we'd met. They just made our case much easier. That night, after dinner, Noah quietly walked into the kitchen. He held a small photograph. It showed all 4 of us at a baseball game from 2 summers earlier. Dad said families stay together forever. He looked up at me. Was that a lie too? I knelt beside him. Then I gave him the only answer I knew was true. Families aren't the people who leave. They're the people who stay. For the first time. He smiled without looking toward the front door. And somehow, I knew we had finally taken the first real step toward becoming a family. The final hearing took place on a rainy Monday morning. The courthouse in Collin County felt colder than a hospital. Rebecca Martinez sat beside my attorney. Across the room sat Ethan. For the first time in months, I saw my brother face to face. He looked older. Thinner. The confidence that had filled every room he entered was gone. When the judge asked if he wished to address the court, Ethan stood. I made mistakes. I never meant to hurt my sons. The judge listened quietly. Then she asked one simple question. When was the last time you spoke directly to your children? Silence. Ethan searched for an answer. I don't remember the exact date. Noah lowered his head. I felt his small hand squeeze mine. The courtroom became painfully quiet. My attorney stood and walked to the judge's bench with a single blue backpack. It was the same backpack Noah had carried the day I found him at the airport. Inside were only 3 things. A small stuffed fox. A folded baseball cap. and a handwritten note. Rebecca explained that Noah had packed it himself. Every Sunday. For nearly 6 months. Because he believed his father would come back for him. The judge slowly unfolded the note. Written in a child's uneven handwriting were the words, "Dad, we're ready whenever you come." No one spoke. Even Ethan looked down. For the first time since all of this began. He cried. Real tears. Not for the cameras. Not for the court. Just a father realizing what his choices had cost. The judge finally broke the silence. Children should never spend months waiting by a door that never opens. She signed the final order. Permanent guardianship was granted. Until the criminal case was complete. The boys would remain with me. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. I ignored every one of them. Noah slipped his hand into mine. Liam smiled for the first time in weeks. Can we go home now? Home. Not Aunt Lauren's house. Not your house. Home. That single word meant more than any court order ever could. 6 months later, Ethan accepted a plea agreement. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Before leaving, he wrote one final letter. Not to the court. Not to the media. To Noah and Liam. He apologized. For the first time, he accepted responsibility. When the boys were old enough, I promised they could read it. Until then. They deserved childhood more than explanations. Today, the blue backpack still sits on a shelf in the hallway. Not because anyone is waiting anymore. But because it reminds us how far we've come. Sometimes people ask me if I ever forgave my brother. The truth is, forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to let someone else's worst decision define the rest of your life. I didn't save those boys. They saved me. They taught me that family isn't built by blood. It's built by the people who stay. Especially when leaving would be easier. 5 years later. The blue backpack was still sitting on the shelf in our hallway. It had become a family tradition. Every year, on the anniversary of the day we met at the airport, Noah would dust it off before placing it back exactly where it belonged. Not because it reminded us of pain. But because it reminded us of hope. Noah was now 13. Liam had grown nearly as tall as I was. They argued over video games, complained about homework, and filled the house with the kind of laughter that once seemed impossible. One Saturday morning, a certified envelope arrived in the mail. The return address read, Federal Correctional Institution, Beaumont, Texas. None of us had seen Ethan since the trial. I placed the envelope on the kitchen table. I think you're old enough to decide. Neither boy reached for it immediately. Finally, Liam picked it up. His hands trembled slightly. Inside was a single handwritten letter. It wasn't long. My sons. If you're reading this, it means your aunt believed you were finally ready. For years I blamed everyone except myself. The government. My business partners. Bad luck. Anyone but the man in the mirror. Prison has a way of taking away every excuse. I told myself I left you with Lauren because she was strong. The truth is, I left you because I was weak. I chose money over my family. Success over honesty. Pride over love. If you never forgive me, I will understand. But I hope you never doubt one thing. The best decision I ever made was leaving you with the person who loved you more than I ever learned how to. Dad. The room was completely silent. Noah folded the letter carefully. Liam looked out the kitchen window for a long time. Finally, he asked me, Do you think people can really change? I thought about my brother. About everything he had destroyed. And everything we had rebuilt. I think people can choose to become better. But they can't erase yesterday. The boys nodded. That afternoon we drove to the lake where we had celebrated Noah's 10th birthday. We skipped stones across the water until sunset. On the way home, Noah suddenly smiled. You know what? I don't think of us as broken anymore. Neither did I. Families aren't defined by the way they begin. They're defined by the people who refuse to give up on each other. As we pulled into the driveway, Liam looked at me and grinned. Mom. He froze, embarrassed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I reached across the front seat and held his hand. You don't have to apologize. Noah laughed. So, can we call you Mom now? I couldn't answer. The tears came too quickly. Instead, I simply nodded. For years I believed I had lost my brother. That day, I realized I had gained 2 sons. And for the first time in my life, I understood that sometimes the family you never expected becomes the one you were always meant to have.